Cold air scraped the back of my neck before my brain caught up. For a second, half asleep in my childhood bedroom, I thought the window was open. Then I shifted on the pillow and felt skin drag against cotton where hair should have been. My eyes snapped open. The ceiling fan spun slow circles overhead, casting lazy shadows across the pale blue paint I'd stared at as a teenager. The Virginia light leaking around the curtains was soft, early, almost kind. Nothing about the way my stomach dropped felt kind. I reached back, expecting the heavy fall of my braid. My fingers met bare scalp. Not a bad haircut, not a choppy bob. Nothing. Every nerve in my body went ice cold and then erupted into pins and needles. I scrambled out of bed, sheets twisting around my legs, heart pounding in my ears so loud I could barely hear my own breathing. The mirror over my dresser waited like a firing squad. I forced myself to look. A woman in a white tank top and flannel pajama pants stared back at me, eyes wide and brown and wild in a face I almost recognized. Same sharp jaw, same faint scar under my left eye from a childhood bike accident. Everything else was wrong. My scalp was shaved clean. No stubble, no patches. Just pale skin where long dark hair had been last night. The line at my nape was too precise to be an accident. Whoever had done this had taken their time. On the corner of the mirror, trapped under a strip of curling yellow tape, a sticky note waited. His blocky handwriting punched through the neon. Now you have the look that fits you. Ridiculous, girl. My father's voice read it aloud in my head, dripping with disgust. For a moment, the room tilted. I grabbed the dresser so hard my knuckles went white. Breathe, Lena, I told myself. In, out. This is real. Deal with it. Intel officers don't panic. We triage. We prioritize. We move. But this wasn't a briefing room. This was my wedding morning. Dress hanging in the closet. Nails painted the night before with my aunt giggling that she'd never seen me so girly. Flowers ordered. Chapel booked. Guests driving in from base and old neighborhoods in Evan's strange world of consultants. I stared at the sticky note until the letters blurred. Down the hall, the house creaked, old wood adjusting to the November chill. A pipe banged. Somewhere, a radio played low, classic rock leaking under a door. The smell of coffee drifted faintly from the kitchen. No sound of clippers. No apology. No footsteps. I yanked open my bedroom door, bare feet slapping against the worn hardwood as I moved down the hall. Dad, I called, voice too high. Dad! No answer. His bedroom door stood open, bed unmade, duffel bag gone. The bathroom sink was clean. No stray hairs, no towel. He'd done this hours ago, then left. Like it was nothing. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I grabbed a towel, wrapped it around my head on instinct, but the terry cloth slid against skin instead of catching on hair. It felt wrong in a way that made my stomach lurch. Lieutenant Elena Ramirez, U.S. Navy intelligence officer trained to keep her head in emergencies, had to lean against the bathroom sink so she didn't throw up. I caught a glimpse of myself in the small mirror above the sink, towel turbaned clumsily, eyes too bright. Ridiculous, girl. The words hissed through my skull, old and familiar. I fumbled for my phone on the counter with hands that suddenly didn't feel like they belonged to me. My contact list blurred. I didn't call my aunt. I didn't call the pastor. I called Evan. The line rang once, twice. On the third ring, his voice cut through, steady and warm and very much alive. Lena, you okay? He asked. You're not supposed to be calling me before I put on this ridiculous tie. I tried to answer and nothing came out but air. Lena? His tone sharpened. Talk to me. My dad... My voice cracked. I swallowed. My dad shaved my head. Silence, not the stunned kind. The tactical kind where you can hear a brain shifting gears. What? He said quietly. I squeezed my eyes shut. I woke up and... It's gone, I blurted. All of it. He left a note. He said I look ridiculous. I can't go out there like this. I can't stand in front of everyone. My vision tunneled. For years, I'd prided myself on being the kind of person who didn't cry. Not because I thought tears were weak, but because in our house, tears had been expensive. Crying had earned me phrases like waste of training and you're not a soldier, you're a disappointment. Now, in my own childhood bathroom, I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cool tile, towel sliding off, phone pressed to my ear, and ugly, hot tears finally spilled over. I should have known he'd do something, I choked out. I shouldn't have stayed here last night. I was stupid. I just wanted one normal— Stop, Evan said, not loud but firm. Don't do that. Don't take his choices and stick them on your chest. I pressed my free hand to my scalp. The skin felt foreign under my fingertips. Too smooth. Exposed. I can't marry you like this, I whispered. Everyone will stare. They'll think I'm broken or sick, or they'll think, he cut in, that something happened and that you still showed up. I let out a helpless, watery laugh that sounded half hysterical. You're missing the part where my father carved ridiculous into the morning, I said. Evan's voice dropped low. I'm coming inside, he said. Don't move. Evan, Lena, he said. And there was the tone I recognized from late-night calls overseas when something had gone sideways in a place his cover story didn't reach. Trust me, I'm on my way. The line clicked. I sat there on the bathroom floor, towel pooled around my shoulders, hearing the echoes of my father's razor in the unforgiving quiet. He'd always liked control. How I spoke, how I stood, how much eye contact I was allowed to make at his table. He'd called my enlistment a slap in the face to his service, as if my decision to wear a different branch's uniform was a betrayal, not a continuation. When the Navy moved me into intel, when he realized I couldn't talk about half of what I did, he'd called that more evidence you're ashamed of your family. When Evan appeared, polished, careful with his words, government consultant, stamped over something I'd learned to read as CIA, my father had seen him not as someone who cared about me, but as another threat to his shaky empire of control. I'd told myself that letting him host the wedding was an olive branch. Now my scalp burned with the cost of that peace offering. A car door slammed out front. Boots on the porch. 30 seconds later, Evan was in the hallway just outside the bathroom. Lena, he called. In here, I managed. The door opened carefully, just enough for him to slip in and close it behind him. He was in a dark suit, tie hanging loose around his neck, hair slightly mussed like he'd yanked his hands through it on the way over. His eyes took everything in, the towel, the red around my eyes, the tremor in my hands, with one sweep. Can I see? He asked softly. It felt like peeling off armor, but I nodded. He came closer, knelt in front of me so we were eye level, and gently, so gently lifted the towel from my head. His gaze didn't flinch. He didn't wince. He just looked. My breath hitched. I know, I started. You're beautiful, he said. I let out a half sob, half snort. Don't, I said. Please don't lie to me right now. I can't handle it. I'm not lying, he replied. You look like someone who survived an ambush and is still sitting upright. He reached out, hand hovering, then rested his palm lightly against the back of my head, where stubble would have been if there had been time for it to grow. Does it hurt? He asked. Everywhere, I admitted. He nodded, thumb tracing the curve behind my ear. This is assault, Lena, he said quietly. Emotional, physical. It's not a prank, it's not a joke. It's him trying to prove he still owns some part of you. My throat closed again. He wins, I whispered. If I walk down that aisle like this, he wins. If I stay home, he wins. I don't know how to not let him have this. He sat back on his heels, studying my face the way he studied satellite photos, searching for patterns, for exits, for angles. Then he smiled, something sharp and warm breaking through the controlled facade he wore in his own secret rooms. You remember when I told you government consultant was the blandest lie I could think of? He asked. You said it because my dad was in earshot, I said, confused. He nodded. Today I'm cashing in 10 years of favors that job gave me, he said. Because your father thinks he humiliated you. I'm not going to let that be the last story anyone remembers from this day. A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the cold. What are you talking about? I asked. He stood, then offered me his hand. Get dressed enough to leave the house, he said. Jeans, sweatshirt, whatever. Bring your dress in the bag. And that towel if it makes you feel better for now. Evan, the church is in the other direction, I protested, even as my fingers closed around his. We're not going straight to the church, he said. Someone up near Quantico owes me a favor. Quantico. That one word carried all kinds of meanings in our world: training, secrets, departments that technically didn't exist. You're not going to have them arrest my father, I said, half joking, half terrified. He shook his head. No, he said. This isn't about revenge. It's about correction, optics, and truth. He squeezed my hand. You've been fighting this man alone your whole life, he added. Let me take point for once. Standing was harder than it should have been. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. But I grabbed a hoodie, pulled it over my tank top, slid into jeans, and looped my arm through his as we moved down the hallway together. In the empty kitchen, the coffee pot sat half full on the warmer. 2 mugs waited in the sink. A pair of clippers lay on a dish towel like a discarded weapon. My stomach lurched. Evan's jaw tightened. He picked up the clippers, flipped them off with a click, and set them in the trash can with deliberate care. Symbolic, he said. Now they're where they belong. We stepped out into the cold morning. The November air slapped my exposed scalp even through the hood, but beneath the sting was something else. A thin thread of anger that finally felt like mine, not his. Evan opened the car door for me like this was any other Saturday. The engine hummed to life. Instead of turning right toward the small white chapel, he turned left, toward the highway, toward Quantico and whatever favor he intended to collect. I rested my bare head against the seat, fingers twisting the fabric of my hoodie, heart pounding with a question I hadn't dared ask yet. What's the plan, Evan? I murmured. He glanced over, eyes on the road, one corner of his mouth lifting. Go on, he said. Trust me, I have a plan. Out the window, Virginia slid by. Strip malls, pines, the familiar curve of the interstate, carrying me away from the house where my father had taken a razor to my hair, and toward something else I hadn't named yet. A day where, for once, he wouldn't be the only one writing the script. The highway hummed under the tires, a steady, low roar that gave my brain something to hold on to. I kept one hand braced on the dash, the other curled tight in my lap, thumb rubbing the edge of my engagement ring until the skin felt raw. Outside, gray November trees blurred into one long smear. Inside that, the car smelled like coffee and the faint citrus of Evan's aftershave. Familiar. Grounding. My scalp tingled under the hood with every bump in the road. For most of my life, I'd learned to catalog sensations to stay calm. Wind speed on the flight deck, the hard plastic of an Intel folder under my palm, the exact pitch of an alarm. Now it was the absence of weight on my neck and the cold bite of air through cotton that kept dragging me back into the moment. You're quiet, Evan said after a few miles, eyes on the traffic ahead. I'm trying not to vomit, I admitted. Fair, he said. This is not a standard pre-ceremony errand. I watched the exit signs flash past, names of towns we'd driven through when I was a kid, my father grumbling about traffic, my mother humming along to the radio to fill the silence. He did this when I cut my hair at 16, I heard myself say. Not shaved, just chin length. I donated it. Thought he'd be proud. What happened? Evan asked, voice neutral. I swallowed. He didn't speak to me for a week, I said. Then he told me I looked like a boy and asked if I was trying to disgrace his uniform by not looking like his idea of a daughter. The words tasted old and metallic. He always said tears were a waste of training, I went on. Told me I made him weak when I cried. Once, when I was 8, he shaved my doll's head because I cared too much about stupid things. I stared out the window. I guess this was the upgrade, I said. Stupid doll, stupid girl. The heater clicked as it cycled. He's been training you for this day your whole life, Evan said quietly. Not the wedding, the humiliation, the control. He needed to prove he could still rewrite your reflection. Something in my chest clenched. He worships discipline, but not the kind you practice, what I said. His discipline is fear, inspection, silence. When my mom died, there wasn't anyone to buffer it anymore. Where was your hair in boot camp? He asked. It made me huff a half laugh. Regulation bun, I said. I thought he'd finally approve. Instead, he said, "You look like everyone else. Happy now, robot?" Of course he did, Evan muttered. He checked the mirror, changed lanes with a smooth, practiced motion. The low rumble of another car's engine passed us. "When did he decide the Navy was betrayal?" he asked. "Same day I signed," I said. "He wanted me in a cul-de-sac with a respectable husband and a respectable fear of him. He said I'd spit on his service by choosing my own path instead of the one he wrote. I remembered his face that day, red, veins standing out, spittle at the corner of his mouth as he called me an ungrateful coward for leaving him. I also remembered the way my mother had stood behind him, hands gripping the back of a chair so hard her knuckles were white, saying nothing. She died 2 months later, I said. Stroke. Or stress, or both. And you shipped out, he said. 3 weeks after the funeral. I nodded. The Navy was the first place where rules made sense, where rank came with responsibility, not just volume. He smiled faintly. That tracks, he said. I fell for the woman in the intel brief who corrected a captain's assumptions with 3 sentences and a slide, then apologized to no one. I snorted. You fell for my access to coffee, I said. Your exact words were, if I bring you satellite photos, will you tell me where the caffeine is? Classified, he said. Still my best op. The memory warmed something that had gone numb. I thought of the first time he'd admitted government consultant was a cover. How he'd watched my face as he said the words agency and overseas asset protection, waiting to see if I'd flinch. I hadn't. We'd both built lives on secrets and patterns and reading people who lied for a living. Somehow we'd missed the one closest to home. What's at Quantico? I asked. Other than training ranges and your bad memories of PT. He signaled, taking an exit that led toward a cluster of low beige buildings tucked behind a line of trees. A woman named Angela, he said. She usually works with people who need to look different on short notice. Witnesses, undercover personnel, that kind of thing. She's discreet and very, very good. I don't have hair to fix, I pointed out. He glanced over. Not everything she does is about hair, he said. Sometimes it's about intent. The word hung between us like a puzzle piece. The building looked like any other government annex. 2 stories of forgettable architecture, blinds half drawn, a security camera watching the parking lot with disinterested precision. Inside, the hallway smelled like toner and stale air. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their whine threading into my already frayed nerves. A woman in her 40s met us at the end of the corridor, leaning against a doorway. Angela had her curly hair twisted up in a clip, sleeves rolled to reveal ink on her forearms, delicate lines that disappeared under fabric. Her eyes were sharp, but her smile was soft. Braxton, she said to Evan, you look almost respectable. I'm in a tie against my will, he replied. Don't hold it against me. Her gaze shifted to me. I shrank a little under the hoodie. This her? She asked. This is Lieutenant Elena Ramirez, Evan said. Lena, this is Angela. She keeps half this town from being recognized at the grocery store. Just the interesting half, she said. Come on. She led us into a small room that smelled faintly of hairspray and lemon cleaner. There was a stylist's chair, a counter with brushes and palettes lined up like instruments, a mirror that took up half the wall. No magazines, no posters, no photos, just tools and reflection. Take the hood off, Angela said, voice gentle but firm. I need to see what we're working with. My throat tightened. It felt like stepping back toward the bathroom mirror all over again. But I'd come this far. I tugged the hoodie back. Cold air hit my scalp. My reflection stared back at me, harsher under the unforgiving overhead light. Bare head, red eyes, the faint shadow of my hairline like a ghost. Angela didn't flinch. She didn't tilt her head in pity. She just circled me once, professional and focused, fingers hovering over my skin without touching. Clean work, she said. Whoever did this wanted control, not blood. No cuts. No nicks. My father, I said. Wedding present. She flicked a quick glance at Evan. His jaw tightened. Right, she said. Well, first things first. You're not ruined. You're altered. There's a difference. My eyes stung. He wanted to make me ridiculous, I said. She snorted. He gave you a profile that half the special operations community pays me to fake, she said. You look like you could walk onto a flight line or a classified briefing and own the room, which, from what I hear, you already do. A reluctant laugh slipped out. I was supposed to look soft today, I admitted. Dress, hair, the whole fairy tale thing I never thought I wanted until it was on the calendar. Angela nodded. Soft is a costume, she said. So is hard. What you need today is intentional. She spun the chair gently toward the counter, away from the mirror. Evan, out, she said. You'll see the product later. Go pretend you're not CIA in the hallway. He saluted her with 2 fingers. Text me when you're ready, he told me, squeezing my shoulder once as he slipped out. The door clicked shut. The room was quieter without him, the hum of the building suddenly loud. Angela set to work. She evened out the shave with a warm, buzzing razor, the vibrations soothing in its own odd way. Every pass was deliberate, smoothing away the jagged insults my father had left in the dark. She massaged a cooling balm into my scalp that smelled faintly of eucalyptus. The touch was firm, professional, devoid of anything that felt like pity. Then she moved to my face. You're used to blending in, she observed as she dabbed concealer under my eyes. Intel, right? They teach you to disappear when needed. Occupational hazard, I said. Not today, she replied. Today we're going to make it very hard for anyone to look away from your eyes long enough to remember you don't have hair. She kept the makeup simple, light coverage, a hint of color in my cheeks, liner that made my eyes look sharper instead of softer, mascara that lengthened without clumping. No false lashes, no contouring, just small adjustments that made me look like I'd slept more than 3 hours and hadn't cried on a bathroom floor. Jewelry? She asked. There's a set in my bag, I said. My mom's pearls. She found the small box and opened it. 2 simple studs nestled inside, yellowed velvet cradling their soft glow. Angela smiled. Perfect, she said. She slipped them into my ears with deft fingers, then stepped back. Okay, she said. Ready to see? I wasn't sure. But she turned the chair anyway. The woman in the mirror wasn't the stranger I'd seen that morning. Yes, my head was still shaved. The bare skin caught the overhead light, smooth and deliberate. The line at my neck was clean now, intentional. But the effect was different. The dark circles under my eyes had softened. My cheekbones were defined without being harsh. The pearl studs framed my face without screaming, bridal. The shaved head, instead of looking like a punishment, looked, if I squinted a little, like a choice. Like I'd stepped into a barber shop on purpose and told the stylist to take it all. I didn't look broken. I looked stark, strong, a little terrifying in a way that made some small part of me sit up straighter. You're not hiding what he did, Angela said behind me. You're refusing to pretend it broke you. My throat tightened. He shaved my head, I said almost to myself. And I'm still getting married. She met my eyes in the mirror. He shaved your hair, she corrected. Not your worth. The overhead light buzzed softly. Outside, somewhere down the hall, at a door closed with a dull thud. I took a breath. It went all the way down this time. Thank you, I said. You can thank me by sending me a professional photo where you look like this, she said. I have a wall of people who thought they were ruined. She smoothed the shoulders of my hoodie, stepped back. You should put the dress on before you leave, she said. Let your brain connect the dots. Bald doesn't mean unfinished. It just means different. In the small adjoining bathroom, I stepped into my dress. A simple, clean line of ivory that we'd chosen because it didn't fight my posture or the way I moved. The fabric whispered as it slid over my skin. When I came back into the main room, Angela let out a low whistle. Now that, she said, hands on her hips, is a problem for anyone who thought they could define you. The dress skimmed my frame, structured but not stiff. The pearls at my ears caught the light and bounced it into my eyes. The bare head above the high neckline looked like a statement, not a wound. I stared at myself. For the first time since I'd woken up, the word ridiculous didn't ring quite so loud. A soft knock sounded on the door. Angela opened it a crack. "She's decent," she called. Evan stepped in, and for a heartbeat, his careful composure cracked. His eyes widened. His hand tightened on the folder he was carrying, plain manila thick. "Wow," he said simply. I arched a brow. "Good wow?" I asked, voice thin. "The best wow," he said. "You look like you're about to brief the Security Council and then go get married." A laugh slid out of me, shaky but real. "Angela did the heavy lifting," I said. "I just evened the battlefield," she replied. Evan set the folder on the counter for a second, crossed to me, and took my hands. "They're going to stare," I warned. "Let them," he said. "They'll have a lot to process in that chapel." I glanced at the folder. "What's in there?" I asked. He followed my gaze, expression shifting. "Part 2 of the plan," he said. "Hair was just the surface move. This is the truth." A ripple of dread and curiosity moved through me. "What did you do, Evan?" I asked, heartbeat picking up. He met my eyes. "You know how I told you my job is finding out the truth and protecting people who are worth protecting?" he said quietly. "I've been doing both for a while now where your father's concerned." My mouth went dry. "You went digging," I said. "I went verifying," he corrected. "And I didn't want to bring any of it into your life unless I had to." He glanced at my bare scalp. "Today," he said, "he made it necessary." Angela stepped discreetly toward the door, hand already on the knob. "I'll give you to the room," she said. "Remember what I told you, Lena? He changed your silhouette. That's all." She slipped out, the door closing with a soft click. The room felt smaller. Outside the building, I heard the distant rumble of engines, more than one, low and coordinated. Evan squeezed my hands once. "When we leave here," he said, "there will be a couple of cars behind us. Friends. Witnesses. They're not there to scare him. They're there to make sure the truth we put on that aisle sticks." He tapped the folder. "You don't have to say a word if you don't want to," he added. "But if you want today to be the last time he defines you in this town, we're going to walk into that church together with more than a shaved head." My heart pounded against the boning of my dress. In the mirror, the woman with the bare scalp and pearl studs looked back at me, eyes clear, jaw set. For years, my father had been the only one willing to write the story of what happened in our house. For the first time, I had both the reflection and the receipts to answer him. "Okay," I said, voice steadying. "Let's go to church." Evan picked up the folder, tucked it under his arm. Outside, as we stepped into the cold, I saw them. 2 dark SUVs idling at the curb, engines purring low, windows tinted. Not an army, not a raid, just enough presence to say, "We saw, we'll remember." I slid into the passenger seat, the fabric of my dress whispering as I moved. My bare scalp tingled as the wind snuck under it, but the chill now felt like a wake-up slap, not just exposure. As we pulled out of the lot and the SUVs fell in behind us, I watched my reflection in the side mirror. Same face, new edges. Somewhere on the other side of this drive, my father would be holding court in a chapel hallway, certain he'd finally found a way to humiliate me beyond repair. He'd spent my whole life training me to shrink under his voice. Today, for the first time, I was going to walk down an aisle toward him. Not to ask permission, but to tell the truth he'd never expected to hear aloud. The closer we got to Chesapeake, the smaller the world felt. Familiar exits. Familiar gas stations. The rusted billboard that had been threatening to collapse since I was 10. My phone buzzed nonstop in my lap. Texts from my aunt, cousins, bridesmaids. "Where are you? Traffic bad? Your dad is pacing like a drill instructor." I didn't answer. Evan's hands were steady on the wheel, the plain folder resting on the console between us like another passenger. In the rearview mirror, the SUVs kept their distance, never crowding, never falling back. Just there. "Who's in those cars?" I asked. "People who know how to sit on their hands until it matters," he said. "Langley adjacent, couple of good friends, couple of internal affairs types who think wedding means uncomfortable but necessary documentation environment." I huffed a laugh. "So romantic," I said. "The romance is that I didn't bring a task force. he replied, just enough to keep the truth from getting shouted down. We turned onto the narrow road that led to the chapel. It was as small and white as I remembered, steeple poking at the washed-out sky, stained glass windows winking muted colors, parking lot half full of sedans and pickup trucks already. Someone had tied a crooked "Congratulations Lena and Evan" banner between two trees. Orange and red leaves skittered across the asphalt in the wind. My stomach flipped. We parked at the far end of the lot. The SUVs slid into spaces a few rows back, innocuous as any government sedan. "Deep breath," Evan said, putting the car in park. I took one. It tasted like old trees and cold air and the faint smell of church potluck casseroles soaked into the siding from decades of Sundays. Inside, through the frosted glass of the foyer doors, I could see blurred shapes moving. A flash of my aunt's bright dress, my cousin's side profile, the back of the pastor's robe, and my father. I didn't have to see him to feel him. His voice carried. "If she shows up like that, somebody better stop her at the door," he barked, words muffled but unmistakable. "I won't have my daughter paraded in front of my Marines in my church looking like a damn joke." Heat shot through my chest. "There he is," I murmured. Evan's jaw flexed. "You sure you're up for this?" he asked quietly. I stared at the door, at the warped reflection of myself in the glass. My hand went to my scalp, fingers tracing the curve. "I've spent 30 years being stopped at doors," I said. "If I hide now, he gets exactly what he wanted." Evan nodded once. "Then we adjust the plan," he said. "I'll go in first, make sure our friends are in position. Then you walk in how you choose. No veil, no hiding. If you want me beside you when you hit that aisle, I will be there. If you want to walk it alone, I'll be at the end. Your call." A memory flashed. Me, 18, standing in a recruiter's office, signing my enlistment papers with my hand shaking just enough to make the letters wobble. My father had refused to come that day. I'd walked through that doorway alone. Today, I wasn't 18, and I wasn't alone. "I'll walk in by myself," I said slowly. "But I want you at my side when we face him." His eyes softened. "Done," he said. We stepped out of the car. The wind cut across the lot, snapping the banner, setting the trees to whispering. Heads turned as we walked up the path. Evan in his suit, folder under one arm, me in my dress, coat draped over my shoulders, bare head catching the dull light. A few people blinked hard, not sure if they were seeing correctly through the glass. My Aunt Carol flung the foyer door open, cheeks flushed. "Lena," she said, voice pitched too high. "You're—" Her eyes landed on my head, and she froze. For a heartbeat, I saw the flicker. Shock. Then the old instinct to smooth it over. To pretend this was a quirky choice. To make excuses so the adults wouldn't yell. Then she caught the look on my face. "Oh," she whispered. Behind her, the small foyer was chaos. Cousins in suits and dresses clustered near the coat rack. My cousin Maria clutched a bouquet like a shield. The pastor, Reverend Miller, stood near the sanctuary doors, fingers worrying his Bible's leather cover. And John Ramirez held court in the corner, one hand on the wall, the other slicing the air as he talked to a group of men in worn Marine Corps jackets. "She's always been dramatic," he was saying. "If she thinks she's walking in here looking like a—" He turned. He saw me. For the first time since I'd woken up, I wanted to see his face when he saw what he'd done. It didn't disappoint. His mouth actually dropped open. His gaze flicked from my scalp, to my dress, to Evan's hand at the small of my back. The color drained from his cheeks, then came roaring back, blotchy and red. "What the hell is this?" he snapped, storming forward. He says, "You're not walking into my church looking like—" "Your church?" I said, voice calm. "Last I checked, Reverend Miller was the one with the key." A few of the old Marines huffed quiet laughs before catching themselves. John's eyes narrowed. "Don't get smart with me, girl," he said. "This is not a costume party. You look ridiculous. You will cover that up or you will not go in." He jabbed a finger toward my head. I had seen that finger in my face more times than I could count. Pointing at my grades, my uniform, my suitcase. Always accompanied by some version of "you owe me." His hand shook now, just a little. "Morning, Mr. Ramirez," Evan said, stepping slightly closer. Not in front of me, but near enough to be felt. His voice was neutral, professional. His consultant voice, not the one he used with me in the quiet. "This is between me and my daughter," my father snapped. "You stay out of it." Evan's jaw flexed once. "Today is between you and the choices you've made," he said quietly. "We're just adjusting the lighting." John glared at him. "I don't know what CIA game you think you're playing." "Dad," I cut in. He swung his gaze back to me as, "Don't call me that," he said. "You stopped being my daughter when you chose their uniform over mine." "It's the same flag," I said. "Not in this house," he shot back. The foyer felt smaller, the air thick. Relatives pretended to adjust corsages and ties, eyes darting between us. My cousin Maria's hand trembled on her bouquet. Aunt Carol chewed her lip. Reverend Miller looked stricken, somewhere between pastor and hostage. Behind my father's shoulder, I caught sight of movement through the cracked sanctuary doors. The pews were full. Neighbors from the cul-de-sac, old church ladies in floral dresses, a row of men in suits from my command looking slightly out of place. On the back pew, I recognized two of Evan's co-workers, plain suits, government posture, eyes sweeping the room. They nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Our witnesses." My father took a step toward me, voice low and venomous. "You will put a wig on," he said. "Or a hat. Something. I am not letting you humiliate me like this in front of my Marines." Something hot and clean flashed through me. "You shaved my head while I was asleep," I said, keeping my voice level. "On my wedding day? And you're worried about being humiliated." A murmur rolled through the foyer. John's jaw clenched. "Don't be dramatic," he said. "It was a joke, a lesson. You always were too attached to that hair. You cried over it like a baby." Tears stung my eyes again, but they didn't fall this time. "I didn't cry when you did it at 16, I said. "And I'm not crying now. Not for you." He opened his mouth. "Shut it." For a second, I saw the confusion there, his old playbook not landing the way it had when I was small enough to look up at him. Evan's hand brushed my elbow, a silent, "I'm here." Behind us, one of the CI colleagues slipped into the foyer, standing near the coat rack like any other guest, phone out, apparently texting. His camera lens was angled just enough that I knew he was documenting every word. John's gaze followed mine, his eyes narrowed. "You really brought your little spy club to our church?" he snarled. I met his glare. "You shaved my head," I said. "You stole money. You lied. Today, we're not doing any of that quietly." His face whipped toward me. "What money?" he barked. "What lie?" The room shifted. You could feel everyone lean in, even if no one moved. Evan exhaled slowly. "Lena," he murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. "We don't have to do this if you're not ready." I thought of my mother's smile, faint in old photos. Of the nights after she died, my father drunk and raging about bills he couldn't pay. About a wife who left him with nothing but a stupid kid. Of the envelope I'd opened months ago, bank statements with my forged signature on them, withdrawals from her life insurance that had never gone to my college as she'd intended. "Anything you need to tell me before we go in?" I asked him. For a heartbeat, something like fear flashed in his eyes. "The ceremony starts in 5 minutes, Reverend Miller said weakly from near the sanctuary doors. "Maybe we should—" "Reverend," I said, not taking my eyes off my father. "Would you mind giving us a minute? With everyone. Doors open." He hesitated. Then slowly, he pushed the sanctuary doors wide. The murmur inside swelled. Rows of faces turned toward us. Family, friends, my commanding officer, church members who'd watched me grow up, old Marines with ribbons on their lapels. And at the back, the plain suits. My scalp tingled in the wash of warm air and murmured surprise that spilled into the foyer. My father stiffened. "Lena, this is not the time," he hissed. "Every other time, you were the only one talking," I said. "Today, I'm not going to be the one who goes back to whispers." Evan stepped to my side, folder in hand. He didn't open it yet. He didn't have to. Just seeing it there, thick and solid, shifted something in the room. My heart hammered, but my voice came out steady. "You shaved my head," I said, loud enough for the first row of pews to hear. You wanted everyone to see me as ridiculous, broken, weak. A hush fell. You could have heard a hymn book drop. But that note on my mirror, I continued, it's not the worst thing you've put your name on. John's eyes flicked to the folder, then back to my face. What did you do? He demanded. I took a breath. This was the line. I could step back, swallow it, let the day collapse into private damage again. Or I could say the thing that might hurt him more than any razor ever could. The truth. Finally out loud, with witnesses. I think we should go inside, I said, meeting his gaze. Let's not keep your Marines waiting. Without waiting for his answer, I squared my shoulders, lifted my bare head, and stepped through the sanctuary doors. The glass and wood framed the aisle like a target and a runway all at once. Every eye turned. Gasps rippled down the pews. Some hands flew to mouths, others curled into fists. Somewhere in the back, I heard my CO swear under his breath. I could feel my father behind me. I could feel Evan at my side. I could feel the folder between us, paper and ink, and years of choices pressed flat. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking toward my father, hoping for his approval. I was walking toward the front of that chapel to put the truth on the table he'd always controlled. That, more than the shaved scalp catching stained glass light, was the thing that made my heart race and kept my feet moving. The sanctuary smells like old wood, flowers, and too many memories. Sunlight filters through stained glass, painting the aisle in bruised colors. Red, blue, gold, rippling over my dress, over the pews, over the faces that have known me since I was little Lena who never cried. Now they're staring at my bare head. I hear the wave before I see it. Gasps, whispers, a hiss of fabric as people lean forward. Somebody up front fumbles a hymn book. It clatters against the pew with a sharp crack that makes me flinch. Elena? Reverend Miller's voice is thin with shock. He stands by the altar, Bible clutched in both hands, eyes wide. Are you all right, dear? I am, I say, and feel the truth of it land in my chest, for the first time in a long time. My voice carries farther than I expected. The sound bounces off the high ceiling, threads through the quiet like smoke. Behind me, heavy steps pound down the center aisle. My father pushes past my aunt, shoves through a cluster of relatives, and reaches me halfway to the altar. His hand clamps around my arm, fingers digging into my skin through the fabric. You're not doing this, he hisses, face inches from mine. His breath is coffee and bitterness. Turn around. Go home, fix this. I gently twist my wrist, breaking his grip like I've broken holds 100 times in training. Muscle memory, not malice. I'm not the one who needs to fix anything, I say. He stares at my shaved head like it's a personal insult carved into the world. You're humiliating me, he spits. In front of my friends, in my church. There it is. Me, mine. I'm not humiliating myself, I say louder. You did that this morning when you shaved my head while I was asleep. The words hang in the air between us, then ripple out through the sanctuary. Murmurs swell, then snap into silence. Reverend Miller lowers his Bible a few inches, shock written plain across his features. My CO in the third pew goes very still. One of the old Marines in the back lets out a low, angry whistle. What? Someone whispers near the aisle. He did what? My father's face goes from red to gray. You watch your mouth, he snarls. Don't lie in God's house. You left a note, I say. On my mirror. Now you have the look that fits you. Ridiculous, girl. A few people gasp. Angela's careful work has turned the word into an echo. Not a verdict, but hearing it out loud still makes my muscles tighten. My father's eyes dart around, spooked by the witnesses he never planned on. It was a joke, he says, louder now as if volume can rewrite the past. She's always been dramatic. Oversensitive, this is nothing. Enough, Evan says quietly. He steps forward, placing himself at my side, the folder tucked under his left arm like a shield. The plain suits at the back straighten, attention sharpening. My father turns on him. You don't get a say here, he snaps. You're a guest, a fiancé, Evan corrects. Soon-to-be husband. And someone who has spent the last year watching you chip at her piece by piece. Reverend Miller clears his throat, voice trembling. Maybe we should move this to the fellowship hall. he suggests weakly. We can postpone, take a moment. No, I say, surprising myself. Every eye swings back to me. For once, I add, I want the people who only ever see his jokes and his tough love to hear the truth, too. A hush falls like a curtain. My father laughs, the sound brittle. You see what she's doing? He says, spreading his hands to the congregation. Making a scene on purpose. Trying to make me look like a monster because You forged my signature, I say. His mouth snaps shut. What? He says. The word comes out small. The morning after Mom died, I continue, pulse hammering in my ears. You sat at that kitchen table and signed my name on the life insurance paperwork, twice. You told me there was nothing left, that she hadn't planned, that I was on my own now. I nod at the folder under Evan's arm. Turns out that wasn't true, I say. Evan steps up beside me, posture casual to anyone who doesn't know what to look for, tense to anyone who does. He opens the folder with unhurried precision, the soft whisper of paper, loud in the stillness. Mr. Ramirez, he says, voice steady, 2 months ago, after Lena mentioned discrepancies, I requested an informal review of her late mother's life insurance with the provider. They found 2 withdrawal forms dated within a week of Mrs. Ramirez's death. He pulls out clear plastic sleeves and holds them up. From the third pew, I see my own name, written in a hand that isn't mine. They have Elena's name on the signature line, Evan continues. But the handwriting matches older documents signed by you, not her. The bank's own fraud unit flagged it as suspect. He hands the sleeves to Reverend Miller. Sir, if you'd pass those to the front pew for a moment, he asks. The pastor looks like he'd rather be anywhere else, but he takes them, hands trembling slightly, and passes them to my aunt, who passes them to the neighbor behind her. They move down the line like a grim offering. My father's jaw works. That's nothing, he stammers. She gave me permission. It was a rough time. We were grieving. Paperwork. Who remembers paperwork? Funny thing about paperwork, I say softly. It remembers you. So do phone logs, bank records, emails. Evan lifts another document. The company's call log shows a phone conversation with you 4 days after Mrs. Ramirez's death, he says. Notes indicate you were urgent and insistent that the funds be transferred to an account solely in your name for household expenses. When the representative asked to speak with Elena as the listed contingent beneficiary, you told them she was unavailable and that you spoke for the family. A hiss runs through the room. My cousin covers her mouth with both hands. One of the old Marines in the back mutters, God damn, under his breath. I was her husband, my father snaps. That money was for me, for us, for the house. She wanted to pay for my college, I cut in. It's in her policy notes. Contingent beneficiary to be used for daughter's education. I look at him. I joined the Navy because you told me there was nothing, I say. Because you said you couldn't help. Because you said I was too expensive to keep. He opens his mouth, closes it. For the first time since I was old enough to understand his moods, he looks lost. I kept the lights on, he says weakly. I paid the mortgage. I bought food. You also bought a new truck, Evan says quietly. He pulls another page. And paid off a credit card 6 months in arrears, and made cash withdrawals at a casino in Hampton Roads, all within 8 weeks of those transfers. My father swings toward him. You had no right to go digging. I had every right to protect the woman I'm marrying, Evan says, a steel edge under the calm. I didn't bring this forward when I first found it because Lena asked me not to. She hoped, against what I advised, that you might find a way to tell the truth yourself. A tear slips down the side of my face. I don't bother to wipe it away. But then you shaved her head, Evan continues, on the day she trusted you to host her wedding. You left her alone to wake up humiliated and confused, just like you left her alone with the consequences of those withdrawals. He looks out over the pews, not with a prosecutor's swagger, but with the tired certainty of someone who has sat in too many interrogation rooms. This isn't about punishing you, he says. It's about stopping the lie that this is just tough love. My father laughs, harsh and empty. Listen to him, he says to the room. Some spook from Langley comes into my town, into my church, and tells you I'm a thief? Because my daughter couldn't hack it at home and needed a story to justify running away? He gestures at my head. She's always been dramatic, he repeats. This is just another stunt. I take a step closer, dress whispering against the carpet. You didn't even stay at the hospital when I broke my arm jumping that stupid creek when I was 9, I say. Mom held my hand, you sat in the car, you said you couldn't stand the crying. My voice doesn't shake. When she died, you didn't hold me, I go on. You handed me a stack of unpaid bills and said, this is your life now, toughen up. Then you took the money she meant for me and spent it on everything but my future. His eyes shine with something that looks like anger and grief fused together. I did my best, he says, but it comes out thin. Your best shaved your daughter's head in her sleep, I say. Your best forged her name on the only safety net her mother left her. Your best calls her a traitor when she puts on a uniform with the same flag you say you fought for. The air in the sanctuary feels thick, almost solid. My father sways a little where he stands. John, Reverend Miller says softly, is this true? My father looks at the pastor like he's a stranger. I was drowning, he says, voice cracking. Bills, mortgage, her things everywhere. I couldn't breathe in that house without seeing her. His gaze flicks to me, then away. I asked the insurance lady what to do, he says. She said the policy could help. I thought if I fixed the money, I could fix everything else. Well, you didn't fix anything, I say. You just buried it. He lets out a broken sound. I lost my wife, Elena, he says. You left. The house was empty. I had nothing. You had me, I say quietly. The murmur behind us dies completely. You had a daughter who would have sat with you, I go on. Who would have helped you figure out the bills? Who would have taken some of the weight if you'd let her? Instead, you told me I was an extra mouth to feed and that the only acceptable empathy in your house was for your pain. His shoulders sag. I was scared, he says, so low I almost miss it. I didn't know how to do any of it without her. You looked at me with her eyes, and all I saw was what I'd lost, so I pushed, tried to make you hard so you wouldn't break like I did. A raw noise catches in his throat. It came out wrong, he whispers. Wrong is dropping a plate, I say. Wrong is forgetting a birthday. Shaving your daughter's head on her wedding day isn't wrong, Dad. It's cruel. The word lands like a slap. He flinches. Cruelty comes easy when you never admit you're afraid, Evan says softly. My father sinks into the front pew like his legs can't hold him. For the first time since my mother's funeral, I see tears in his eyes. Not rage tears, not self-pity, just grief. Raw and late. He buries his face in his hands. I don't expect forgiveness, he mutters. Not from you, not from her. I don't know how to be anything else. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's full of held breaths, of shifting narratives, of people in the pews replaying every time they'd laughed off his comments as just John being John. Behind us, one of the CIA colleagues shifts his weight, phone still lowered, but camera still on, capturing the moment a man who built an entire personality on hardness finally admits he's broken. Reverend Miller clears his throat, voice unsteady. Maybe, he says, today is the first day you learn. My father looks up, eyes red. At her expense, he says, again. He glances at me. I ruined your mother's last gift to you, he says, and now I ruined the morning that was supposed to be yours. I don't know how to undo that. You can't, I say. The words feel like a door closing and something else opening. But you can stop adding chapters to that story, I add. You can stop shaving away pieces of me every time you're afraid. He stares at my bare scalp, then drops his gaze like he can't stand to see the evidence of himself. I thought if you looked less like her, he admits, voice ragged, it would hurt less to watch you leave. A single, stunned inhale goes through the congregation. Hurting you hurt me more, he adds, barely audible. The confession sits there, ugly and honest. I feel something in my chest loosen, not in forgiveness, but in recognition. He isn't a monster. He's a man who let his fear metastasize into control until it swallowed every decent thing he might have been. Understanding doesn't excuse, but it does reframe. I joined the Navy because I needed someone to teach me what strength looked like without shouting, I say. I stayed because I found people who could hold their own pain without handing me the bill. I take a breath. The Navy didn't break me, I say. You did. Long before I ever put on a uniform. But it also taught me something you never did. That I don't have to carry your damage as my identity. The words land like pins in a map, marking where I stop letting his narrative define mine. I turn toward Evan. Toward the altar. Toward the life that waits on the other side of this aisle. I'm not seeking revenge, I tell my father. I'm ending the cycle. What you did this morning, what you did with that insurance money, that's the last time your fear gets to write my story. My father's shoulders shake. He presses his palms over his eyes. I don't know how to fix this, he repeats. Then start by telling the truth, I say. To yourself. To this room. To whoever you ask for help after this. Reverend Miller steps forward, voice trembling but stronger now. John, he says gently, you've hurt your daughter deeply. You've wronged her. You've wronged Elena's memory, but you're not dead yet. You can still choose a different kind of strength. He looks at me. Elena, he says, what do you want to do? The question hangs there, heavy as incense. Behind me, I feel Evan's eyes on me, steady, not guiding. Behind him, I feel the gaze of every person in that church who has ever watched me walk in with my shoulders just a bit too straight. There are a dozen possible answers. Call off the wedding, postpone, leave, stay, have my father escorted out, let him remain. In the end, the one that rises is the simplest. I want to get married, I say. Reverend Miller blinks. Today, he asks. Today, I say. As myself, not as someone my father tried to break. A murmur of relief and surprise rustles through the pews. My father looks up, stunned. You'd still go through with it? He whispers. I'm not doing it for you, I say. I'm doing it in spite of you. The line lands sharp and clean. Evan's hand finds mine. His fingers are warm, sure. Reverend, he says, if you're willing, we'd like to stand in front of that cross and make some promises that have nothing to do with shaving or signatures and everything to do with never weaponizing each other's wounds. Miller lets out a shaky breath. I think that's the most honest wedding I've ever been asked to perform, he says. He looks at my father. John, he adds, you are welcome to stay, quietly, as a man who just heard the truth about himself, or you can step outside and start making some calls for help. But you do not get another word at this altar today. My father looks like someone pulled the last of his script out of his hands and left him with silence he's never learned to inhabit. He nods once. I'll stay, he says, if she lets me. He looks at me, eyes pleading in a way I've never seen. I hold his gaze for a long, slow beat. You can stay, I say finally. But you don't give me away today. The old phrase tastes wrong now. He flinches, then nods. I don't have that right, he says. No, I agree. You don't. I turn back toward the altar. My knees feel shaky, but my spine feels solid. Evan squeezes my hand, then leans in, his breath warm against my bare scalp as he whispers, just for me. Round one goes to you. I huff out a breath that's almost a laugh. Round one goes to the truth, I whisper back. As Reverend Miller moves to his place and the congregation settles into a hushed, stunned quiet, I glance once more at my father in the front pew, small, crumpled, stripped of the armor of jokes and rank and control. For the first time, I don't feel the urge to rush in and patch him up. I feel the urge to step forward. The chapel is the same, the vows will be the same. But the girl walking down this aisle is not the one who woke up on that bathroom floor. The razor took my hair. It didn't take my choice. And in the next breath, the next step, I decide exactly who I'm saying I do as and who I'm not willing to be anymore. The sanctuary never felt so small. We weren't even at the altar yet, and the air already felt thick with everything we'd just dragged into the light. Insurance forms, clippers, old wounds. Reverend Miller cleared his throat, thumb running along the edge of his Bible, like a man searching for the right page in a book he'd read 1,000 times. Friends, he said, voice steadier than before, but we are slightly off script. A few people laughed nervously. He smiled, a little crooked. But weddings were never meant to be about scripts, he went on. They're about vows, about choosing, with eyes open, who you're going to walk beside when life looks nothing like the picture on the invitation. His gaze landed on me, on my bare scalp catching a shard of stained glass light. Then on Evan, still holding my hand. If there was any doubt about eyes being open here, he added, I think that's been resolved. Soft laughter rippled through the room, the tension loosening by a notch. Evan squeezed my fingers. You sure? He murmured. I nodded. My heart still pounded, but the nausea had eased. My feet felt like they belonged to me again. Let's do the part we actually came for, I said. He smiled. Reverend Miller moved to the center. Normally, he said, this is where I would ask, who gives this woman in marriage? He glanced at my father. John sat in the front pew, shoulders slumped, hands hanging uselessly between his knees, eyes fixed on the worn carpet. Whatever performance he'd planned had burned off under the heat of his own actions. Miller cleared his throat. Today, he said gently, I think the better question is, Elena, who gives herself here? The room went quiet again, but this time the silence wasn't brittle. It felt expectant. I took a breath. For 30 years, every version of this day in my head had included my father's hand on my arm, his voice saying, I do, on my behalf, even if the rest of him never matched the words. Now, looking at Evan, at the aisle behind us, at the pews full of people who had just watched my father's worst laid bare, I felt something else rising. I do, I said, my own voice answering my own life. Miller nodded. Then let's proceed, he said. We stepped up onto the small platform. The altar cloth was simple, white with a gold cross. The flowers my aunt had arranged sat in a modest vase, white roses, eucalyptus, a few sprigs of baby's breath, drooping at the edges. No archway, no fireworks, just wood, light, and the two of us. I'd always thought vows were the fluffy part, the part everyone tuned out, waiting for rings and kisses and cake. Standing there, shaved head tingling under the weight of 100 eyes, I realized they were the mission brief, the rules of engagement we were writing together. Miller opened his book, then closed it again. I had some words prepared, he admitted. But after what we've just heard, I think we need different ones. He turned to us. Lena, he said, do you have anything you'd like to say to this man, in front of these witnesses, about the kind of marriage you intend to build? My throat tightened. I'd written vows. They were sitting neatly printed in my bag somewhere, lines about partnership, patience, shared coffee, deployments, and coming home. They felt small now. I looked at Evan, at the folder under his arm, at the way his shoulders were relaxed but ready, like he could snap into protection at any second, and also knew when to stand down. He raised his brows, giving me the "your move, Lieutenant" face he used in war games. Words came, not from the script I'd written, but from the one I'd lived. I promise, I said slowly, to never use what I know about you as a weapon, and his eyes softened. I promise to listen when you say you're not okay, I went on, and not say toughen up when what you need is help. I thought of the bathroom floor, of his hand against my bare scalp, of the way he'd said, this is assault like a fact, not a metaphor. I promise to tell you the truth, I said, even when it's messy, even when it scares me, even when it scares you. I glanced back just once at my father. He was watching me like he'd never seen me speak before thus. And I promise, I finished, That what happened in my childhood house stays there. It doesn't get to set the rules in ours. A murmur of assent rippled through a few of the pews. Miller turned to Evan. And you, Evan, he asked. What do you want to vow to this woman who has already walked through fire before she ever got to this altar? Evan took a breath. He didn't pull out the note cards I knew he'd written. He didn't touch the folder. He just looked at me like the rest of the room had blurred. I promise, he said, to never use my training to hurt you. My chest tightened. I promise to never make you doubt your own reality, he continued. If you say something's wrong, I will believe you. We'll figure out the rest together. He exhaled, a shaky sound I'd rarely heard from him. I promise to be the kind of man you don't have to shrink around, he said. You can be as big, as sharp, as loud, as quiet as you really are, and I'll adjust, not the other way around. My vision blurred. He smiled, just a little. And I promise, he added, to remember this morning. Every time I'm tempted to think I know what's best for you, more than you do. My throat felt too tight to speak, but my hand found his, fingers curling around his like they'd been designed to interlock. Rings came next. Simple bands. No diamonds, just metal, worn by people who use their hands. My aunt stepped up with them, eyes still suspiciously bright. As she placed mine in Evan's palm, she squeezed my fingers. You look like her, she whispered, but stronger. I swallowed. My mother's image flickered in my mind. Laugh lines, long hair, tired eyes that still sparkled when she looked at me. I hoped wherever she was. She knew we were doing something she'd never been allowed to. Miller cleared his throat. With these rings, he said, you're not just marking each other as taken, you're marking each other as trusted. He nodded. Evan slid the band onto my finger. Trusted, he said softly. I slid his onto his hand. Trusted, I echoed. The kiss was simple. No dip. No cheering. Just his lips against mine, warm and steady. His hand on the back of my head like a shield instead of anything else. The congregation exhaled as one. Applause started slow. One pair of hands in the second pew, then another in the back. Then the sound swelled until the little chapel was full of it. I caught sight of my father through the blur. He was clapping, not with enthusiasm, not with the false bravado he'd used at other people's milestones, just softly, like a man trying out a new motion. Behind him, in the back pew, Evan's colleagues exchanged glances. Then one of them slipped out the side door, phone already out, no doubt sending edited versions of the morning's events into secure channels. Our wedding had never been about them. Their part was almost done. Miller lifted his hands. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, voice stronger now, it is my honor, after an unusually honest prelude, to present to you Mr. and Mrs. Evan and Elena Braxton. He paused, then chuckled. Or, as I suspect she'll insist, Lieutenant Elena Ramirez Braxton, U.S. Navy, he added. Laughter rolled through the room. I smiled. He wasn't wrong. We walked back down the aisle together, me with my bare head high, him with the folder once again tucked under his arm, both of us moving through a corridor of people whose faces had shifted from polite smiles to something else. Respect. Shock. A strange, budding kind of admiration. By the door, Reverend Miller touched my shoulder. In 30 years, he murmured, I've never seen a wedding so true. I nodded. Neither have I said. As we stepped into the cool air of the fellowship hall, my father stood in the doorway between rooms like a man caught between two worlds, the one he knew how to control and the one he was finally being invited to enter with his hands empty. His eyes were red-rimmed. His voice, when he spoke, was rough as gravel. I don't expect a dance, he said quietly, or a speech or anything. But if you'll spare me 5 minutes before you leave, just 5, I'd be grateful. Old me would have leapt at the chance, rushing to mend the damage before the plates cooled. New me, today, me, looked at Evan, looked at the hall full of people waiting for cake and small talk and whatever normalcy we could salvage, and then back at the man who'd shaved my head and stolen my safety net. 5 minutes, I said. Outside. Later. No more today. He nodded like a man given parole he hadn't expected. I'll be out by the bench, he said. He stepped aside. Let us pass. Let me walk into my own reception without trying to own the doorway. For the first time, that small gesture felt like proof of something shifting. Not enough, but more than nothing. The fellowship hall felt like a parallel universe. Same white walls, same folding tables draped in pastel cloths, same deviled eggs and sheet cake and crock pots lined up along the buffet. But the conversations were different. Instead of polite remarks about the weather and my dress, people came up to me like they were approaching a bomb that had already gone off and hadn't quite stopped ticking. My CO clasped my hand so hard my knuckles cracked. Lieutenant, he said, voice low. That was a lot. Yes, sir, I said. You need anything from the command side? He asked. Documentation? Counseling? Time? Time, maybe, I said. Not off, just time. He nodded. We'll make sure no one back at the pier hears a twisted version first, he added. You've earned that much. Aunt Carol barreled in next, wrapping me in a careful hug, mindful of my head. I'm so sorry, she whispered into my shoulder. I should have guessed. I should have. She pulled back, eyes wet. I laughed at his stories for years, called it just John's way. I was wrong. It was easier than looking at it straight on, I said. We all did what we had to survive it. She wiped her cheeks. You didn't survive it, she corrected. You broke it. At one of the tables, an old Marine who'd served with my father in Vietnam came over, hat in hand. He used to talk about you, the man said, voice rough. The kid who never cried. We thought he was proud. Thought that hardness was strength. That's what we were taught. He shook his head. Didn't realize we were confusing trauma with toughness, he admitted. Seeing him today. Seeing you. He swallowed. You did right, kid. Don't let anybody tell you different. I nodded. Thank you, I said. He patted my shoulder, then walked back to my father's pew like a man carrying questions he was finally ready to ask. Evan drifted in and out of conversations, keeping an eye on the door, the plain suits. Me. He never strayed too far. At one point, I caught the tail end of a murmured exchange with one of his colleagues. Everything recorded? He asked. Clean audio, the man replied. Through the whole exchange, if her father tries to spin this later, the record's clear. Good, Evan said. Then we're done. Take your people home. This is family now. The colleague nodded, gave me a small salute I wasn't supposed to recognize, and slipped out the side door with the others, SUVs rolling out of the parking lot a few minutes later. The weight of the folder eased without them behind it. When the cake had been cut, the bouquet tossed, the last aunt hugged and shaken, the noise in the hall dimmed. Evan tapped his watch. 5 minutes outside with him, he said. Then you never have to see him without backup again unless you choose it. I nodded. We slipped out the side door into the prayer garden. The bench by the small stone fountain was exactly where I'd sat as a teenager to avoid coffee hour conversations, tracing the cracks in the concrete with my toe. Now my father sat there, hands clasped, shoulders hunched. He looked smaller in daylight. Less like a threat, more like a man whose armor no longer fit. I let Evan hang back by the doorway, far enough to give us privacy, close enough to step in if needed. The November air was sharper now, the sun lower. My scalp tingled, half from the cold, half from the focus of my father's gaze, when he finally looked up. Lieutenant, he said, like he was testing the word. John, I answered. His mouth twitched. I suppose I earned that, he said. He took a breath. The insurance money, he began, then stopped. You already know what I did. You already said what it cost you. There's nothing I can add that doesn't sound like an excuse. I leaned against the low stone wall, keeping a few feet between us. Then don't add, I said. Acknowledge. He nodded slowly. I stole from you, he said. The words came out quieter than I expected, but they were whole. I took what your mother meant for your future, and I used it to patch the holes in mine, he went on. Then I lied about it so I wouldn't have to look you in the eye and admit I'd failed twice, first as a husband, then as a father. He swallowed. When you joined the Navy, I told myself it was your choice, he said. That you wanted out, that you were too proud to accept help. Sounded better than the truth. Which was? I asked. That I'd made home unlivable, he said, and the only place you saw a future was somewhere I couldn't follow. The fountain gurgled softly. A bird hopped along the low wall, head tilted as if listening. And this morning? I asked. What was the truth there? He flinched. I woke up terrified, he said. Saw the dress. The pictures in my head of you leaving. Of everyone cooing over how beautiful you looked, like they used to over your mother. He stared at his hands. I thought if I made it ugly, he admitted, voice shaking. If I made you angry enough, embarrassed enough, you'd stay. Or hate me enough that leaving wouldn't hurt. Or, I don't know, I just didn't want to be the only one in pain again. My chest ached. That's not love, I said. I know, he whispered. It's fear in a uniform. We sat with that for a minute. Wind rustled the last few leaves clinging to the trees. Reverend Miller gave me a number, he said finally. VA counselor. Group for guys like me. He said if I keep calling what I did just how I am, I'm going to die alone and angry. He's right, I said. He nodded. I don't want to be that man, he said. I don't know how to be another one, but I can at least walk into a room where someone does. He looked up at me, eyes red, voice steady. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I'm not asking for holidays. I'm asking for the chance to do the work so that if you ever decide you want more than these 5 minutes, I'm not still the same blunt instrument. Old me would have rushed to reassure him, to say, it's okay when it wasn't. Today, I watched my breath mist in the cold and chose my words like I chose targets in a brief. I want you to go, I said, to counseling, to group, to whatever the VA offers with real therapists, not bar stools. His shoulders sagged with something that looked like relief. I can do that, he said. I want you to say I hurt my daughter out loud, I added. Not I made mistakes. Not I did my best. The truth. He nodded once, Kate. I hurt my daughter, he repeated, voice cracking. Repeatedly, on purpose, because I didn't know what else to do with my own pain. The words shook, but they didn't break. And I want you to do it for you, I said. Not for me, not to earn your way back into my good graces, because you are running out of chances to die as anything other than the man who shaved his kid's head and stole her future. His mouth twisted. That's a hell of an epitaph, he said. Change it, I replied. He let out a breath that fogged the air between us. Can you ever forgive? I don't know, I cut in. He swallowed whatever had been coming next. That's honest, he said. And it's the best I can do right now, I replied. Forgiveness, if it comes, will be for me. Not to spare you consequences. You don't get to rush me there because it makes you feel better. He nodded. Understood, he said. We sat for another moment, two people in a garden that had seen decades of whispered confessions and small-town gossip, now holding something heavier. You looked like her, he said softly. Up there, your mother. When you said you wanted to get married anyway. My throat tightened. She would have wanted me to get to the anyway, I said. He nodded. I'm going to go make that call, he said, pushing himself up from the bench. His knees cracked. While I still remember how this feels. He took a few steps toward the parking lot, then turned back. Congratulations, he said. For whatever that's worth from me. I held his gaze. It's worth more when you back it up, I said. He dipped his head, a clumsy, almost salute, then walked away, shoulders hunched against the cold, phone already out. Evan joined me by the bench, slipping an arm around my waist. How are you doing? He asked. Like I lived 2 lives today, I said. One where I woke up as his daughter, and one where I walked out as myself. Which one feels more real? He asked. I leaned my shaved head against his shoulder, feeling the warmth through his suit. This one, I said, even if the other keeps trying to drag me back sometimes. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. Then we'll keep choosing this one, he said. One day at a time. That night, our tiny rental house felt like a safe house. No floral centerpieces, no elaborate getaway car with "just married" scrawled on the back. Just a duplex with peeling paint, 2 suitcases by the door, my dress hanging from a closet hook, and the soft tick of the kitchen clock. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror again, 12 hours and a lifetime from where I'd been that morning. Same bare scalp, same face, different eyes. I touched the reflection lightly, fingers tracing the curve of my head. Angela's work held. There was no redness now, just smooth skin and the faint sheen of balm. The sticky note from my father was long gone, left in the trash can of the house I'd be returning to on my own terms, if at all. In its place, on our mirror, Evan had stuck a new note. Plain white paper, his careful block letters. They can take your hair. They don't get your story. I snorted, half laugh, half breath. That's my line, I called. From the living room, over the murmur of some muted old movie, he answered, consider it stolen, documented, and returned. I pulled on an old navy PT shirt, the cotton soft with years of washes, and padded out to the couch. He was sprawled there, tie off, dress shirt untucked, feet up on the coffee table, one arm open in invitation. I curled against him, my head finding its place against his chest, the thump of his heartbeat steady under my ear. The events of the day rolled through me in flashes. Cold tile under my feet. Mirror, note, phone, Quantico's beige hallway. Angela's cool fingers, the click of pearl studs. The chapel doors swinging open. My father's hand on my arm. The folder in Evan's grip. The insurance forms. The gasps. The moment I said I do to myself before anyone else could. You know, Evan said softly, fingers tracing circles on my arm. I've done extractions easier than today. I laughed into his shirt. You didn't have to bring half of Langley to my wedding, I said. Half? He scoffed. Please, that was a rounding error. I tilted my head to look up at him. Did we go too far? I asked. With the documents, the timing, the public part. He considered. We didn't leak it to the paper, he said. We didn't have him arrested in the foyer. We gave him the chance to tell the truth. He chose not to. The room deserved to know why his version of discipline looked like an ambush. He brushed his knuckles lightly along my jaw. You deserved a day where the story matched the scars, he added. And where the people who say they love you got to see the whole picture, not just his cut of it. I let that sink in. It still feels heavy, I admitted. Truth usually does, he said, at least at first. We fell into a comfortable quiet. Outside, a car drove by, headlights slipping across the ceiling for a moment before fading. Somewhere in the building, someone laughed. A TV turned up too loud, a dog barked twice, then settled. Normal sounds. For the first time, my body listened and believed them. What do you want to do about him? Evan asked after a while. Long term. I thought about my father in the prayer garden, phone in hand, finally putting words like I hurt my daughter into the air. I want him to get help, I said. Not for me, for him. So he doesn't die convinced that the only way to be strong is to stomp on everyone smaller. Evan nodded. And you? He asked. What do you want for you? That was the part I'd never really let myself answer. I want to live a life where today, a pivot, not a pattern, I said slowly. Where shaving my head is the last time someone else's fear rewrites my body without my consent. My fingers toyed with his ring, tracing the edge. I want to give Liam, if we ever have a Liam or whoever we get, a family that doesn't weaponize toughness, I continued, where crying doesn't cost you your dignity, where discipline and love share space. He smiled. Ambitious, he said. Occupational hazard, I replied. He tightened his arm around me. Come, I want to remember this morning, he said quietly. Not because of him, because of you. Me, traumatized on a bathroom floor, I asked. He shook his head. You calling anyway, he said. You letting me in. You walking into that chapel with your head bare when every script you grew up with told you to hide. His voice softened. You choosing to get married after all of that, he added, not as an act of denial, but as a statement that what he did could change the optics, not the outcome. My eyes stung again, but This time, the tears didn't feel like something I needed to apologize for. They felt like proof. Proof that the training that taught me not to show weakness hadn't completely erased my ability to feel. Proof that surviving didn't mean staying numb. I took a long, slow breath. Exhaled. I lived 2 lives in one day, I said. This morning, I was a girl waking up under his rules. Tonight, I'm a woman going to sleep under mine. And under our leaky roof, he added. Don't forget the landlord's contribution. I snorted. And you're extremely mediocre cooking, I said. He put a hand over his heart, wounded. Excuse you, he said. My chicken is classified as acceptable in 3 agencies. We lay there, laughing quietly, letting the weight of normal conversations settle over everything that had cracked open. Eventually, the laughter faded. The clock ticked on. My body began to unwind in that deep, post-storm way. Muscles unclenching, breath slowing, mind finally releasing the mental after-action report it had been writing all day. Tomorrow, there would be calls. From my aunt, from Reverend Miller, from my father, maybe, if he didn't lose his nerve after the counselor answered. There would be paperwork, adjusting beneficiary records, updating emergency contacts, removing his name from forms that could get me hurt if he chose apathy again. There would be counseling. For me. For him, if he followed through. For us, together, if and when I ever felt ready to sit in a room with him and a third party who knew how to hold a bomb without letting it explode. But tonight, there was this. A bare head resting on a chest that didn't flinch away from my tears. A ring on my finger that meant more than a legal status. A note on the bathroom mirror that told the truth more cleanly than any razor ever could. I closed my eyes. The images of the day flickered behind them. Mirror, note, Angela's calm hands, stained glass on my scalp, my father's shoulders shaking, my own voice saying I do to myself first. For years, I'd believed strength meant taking whatever people did to me and swallowing it without choking. Today, I'd learned something sharper. Real strength isn't just surviving what they do in the dark. It's standing under bright lights, scars exposed, and saying, this happened and it stops here. I fell asleep like that, still in my PT shirt, our wedding bands catching a sliver of streetlight, the buzz of the old refrigerator in the kitchen humming like a lullaby. In the morning, my head would still be bare. My father's choices would still be real, but so would mine. They'd taken my hair. They didn't get my story.